Greetings, Salbona, Konnichiwa, Como esta? From wherever you are. My name is Dingan Klaba. Most of my friends call me D. And today is Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. I am recording this from South Africa, specifically a city called Durban in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. And the reason I'm here is to caretake for my parents. My father is a South African, born, raised in South Africa, came over to the U.S., met my mother, who is an American, and they married in the 70s, and they've been together, ever since. And so, because they're older, it's required that someone from the family help to just sort of take care of things around the property that we have. And obviously my father's health being what it is, he has had Parkinson's disease now for many years, and as a result, it's just harder for him to be able to do the sort of things that we as healthy people take for granted. So I'm just here to help take care of that situation and to provide as best of a living situation for them as I can, because obviously they did the same thing for me, so it's the least I can do. But the reason that I made this vlog primarily was to tell my story from my perspective, and to sort of record all the different experiences that I've had. I feel like I have a very unique experience because of my background, because of the fact that my father is a South African who never got his American citizenship, and but lived in America for maybe over 20 years, and my mother also born and raised in Chicago. That sort of having that dual perspective, and being basically this African American with an African father and an African name, it gave me a very unique perspective on life in the world. One that just made me always aware of the fact that I was kind of the same or similar to my African American peers, but a little bit different. And the same thing with the South African side, right? I got a South African name, I have a South African parent, but I'm not quite the same. I'm not quite the same as a normal, regular, everyday Zulu, black person, which is, for those that don't know, the Zulus are an ethnic group here, the biggest ethnic group in South Africa. Specifically, the province where I'm staying is where they call their home, Zululand, KwaZulu-Natal, hence the name KwaZulu-Natal. So, obviously I'm not quite 100% Zulu either, right? So, and having spent time in both countries, I have a very unique experience that I just feel like a lot of people don't have. So this vlog is just going to be aimed at trying to communicate, my story and some of the things that I've experienced, and, use as a vehicle for education, for people on both sides that are curious, what's it like in America? What's it like in South Africa? So, in general, that's the purpose of this vlog. And yeah, I suppose we should get straight into it. A lot of friends, first of all, I want to apologize for not staying in touch with a lot of my friends and people. I know a lot of people have wondering how I've been, and let me just tell you, it's nothing personal. It's just it's been nice being back here in South Africa and not having to work a 9 to 5 and just being able to chill and get your stuff together. It's been real nice to be able to do that, because in America or anywhere where you have to work a 9 to 5 and you don't really have a whole lot of downtime to really put your life into perspective or do the things that you want to do, it's hard, you know what I mean? But here I feel like I actually have the freedom to do that. I don't have much money, but I have the time and the freedom to be able to really think about my life objectively, and what I want to go for and things that I want to do, instead of having to be accountable to someone else's schedule. My freedom is very important to me. So I feel like that's the most that's really a critical thing that I just wouldn't have had in America. So being back in South Africa, very nice. Right now I'm drinking this South African beer. It's called Jack Black, and it was brewed in Cape Town, and it's actually some of the best beer I've ever had, honestly. I'm a big pale ale guy, and as you can see, it's got that pale ale sticker right there. So unfortunately, you don't find a whole lot of that in South Africa. You find a whole lot of that back where I'm from in Minneapolis, but around here it's kind of hard to find. So yeah, man, I'm chilling. I've also taken a break from the cigarettes. Haven't had a cigarette in I don't even know, maybe 2 or 3 months now. It's been a long time. My primary mode of tobacco intake actually has become this little thing right here. It's called a V pen, and it's like a vaporizer. It's a handheld vaporizer. You can use it for any kind of dried herbal thing that you want to smoke, and just put it inside of there. And as long as it's charged up right, you just hit 3 buttons and you wait for it to charge up, and you start puffing. And it has the same effect. It has the same feel as smoking in general, but it's just a vaporizer. So instead of smoke inhalation, it's vapor inhalation, which is different. Which means it's not as damaging to your lungs. You're also not intaking, depending on what kind of tobacco you're using, right? But if you're using the kind of regular tobacco that I'm using, you don't get that same chemical, tar. There's all types of garbage that they put in cigarettes these days that you have no control over, right? Fiberglass in some cases, so I feel like this is a much easier, much healthier way to consume tobacco, because I do get cravings every once in a while. Not every day, you know what I mean? But whenever I feel like, having a drag, it's really that simple, Not nearly as damaging to your health as regular cigarette is. So for anyone that is struggling with this cigarette addiction, and trust me, I have struggled not quite as badly as some people that I know, but I have struggled as well. I'm telling you, look into the vaporizing thing. It's not quite the same, but it's, if you're trying to quit, it might be a good thing to use. So yeah, without further ado though, we should probably start talking about my story while I'm here. So I guess I'm just going to start to chronicle basically my life story from A to Z, and I'm not going to go into so much depth about it, but just a basic recap. So I was born to Nomusa and Indiko Paba. Like I said, Nomusa is my American mother, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, West Side. My father is a South African national who came over here in the 1970s to escape a racist system called apartheid, which existed in South Africa between the early 1900s and late 1990s. And there will be time to go over all of that in a different, episode. But yeah, I was born, my family was living in, like I said, Harvey, Illinois at the time. Don't have many memories of that. Sometime we moved to Evanston, Illinois, and that's where my first memories as a child actually began. Some of the best memories actually I've ever had. I had a great childhood. Went to homeschool. I was homeschooled as a child. But I also did go to kindergarten, so I got to experience life with other kids. And going to kindergarten was that was the first experience where I felt like I realized that I was different, because it was clear to me that nobody else really had the same name that I did. There were very few black kids in that class to begin with, but on top of which I was treated super specially because of my background, because of the fact that I had an African name and all this other stuff, right? So it was made very clear to me at an early age that I was different, the way that the white kids would treat me especially. It was very apparent, without going into too much details, you know what I mean? That was where I became fully aware of the differences that I had with society. We lived there for a while, great memories. And then sometime when I was 8 or 7, I believe I was 8 years old, my mom got a job teaching in Milwaukee, and it was an opportunity, a better economic opportunity for us. And so we decided to move out there. I spent, I would say most of my teenage years, pretty much all of my, younger and teenage years in Milwaukee. I practically grew up in Milwaukee. Stayed in 3 different homes, 3 different sides of town. The first neighborhood was pretty much in the hood, basically the nicest block on the hood, but still surrounded by the hood. And then we moved to North Milwaukee, which is an interesting neighborhood. It was, mixed in with some, poor whites and poor blacks and some poor Asians, you know what I mean? All in this one little neighborhood. It was very interesting, very unique neighborhood. not quite the hood, but still, right, like I said, right down the block, you get some hood-ish mentality going on, right? The McDonald's on the corner is always getting robbed every Sunday, or, you know what I mean? That type of thing. So, it wasn't quite, like the violent, super violent, drugs everywhere type of environment, but it was like accessible. Let me just say it like that. The hood was always accessible if you wanted it. It was right down the block. The projects were literally right down the block, right? So it wasn't like we was going nowhere for a while. And then eventually we moved to a nicer part of town in Milwaukee, literally right down the street from Mayor Tom Barrett, who was the mayor of Milwaukee at that time. And, that by far was clearly the nicest neighborhood in Milwaukee I ever lived in. It's a neighborhood called Washington Heights. And that's where I finished out my high school education. Ran into a little trouble with the law, used to do some petty crimes here and there, mostly with graffiti. My mom sent me off to Minneapolis as a result, a couple times, just for a summer. And then when I graduated from high school, it was basically resolved that I was going to live in Minneapolis with my brothers. I'm the youngest of, 5 children. So, my mom was very, very, very much wanted to make sure that I went off and did my own thing. Because she was just, tired of raising kids. After the 5th one, you get really, you start sniffing freedom and you're like, yeah, I need to have this. So some people think it's harsh to get kicked out at 18, but for me, it was essential because it really helped me to build a sense of independence and a sense of, you got to get it on your own. You know what I mean? If I was always under my mom's titty, I feel like I may have never been able to know what it was like to actually be on my own and actually have to do what I had to do on my own to survive. And living with my brothers, I actually got a taste of that, and it wasn't easy. But I learned a whole lot, about myself, about life, about the streets. And then sometime in 2011, 2010, 2011, there was a movement called Occupy Wall Street. Now, as far as my politics at the time, I come from a very politically, active family, right? My mom was a civil rights worker. My dad was involved with the ANC, the African National Congress, which was fighting against the South African racist apartheid government at the time. So I come from a very politically active family already. We have all kinds of books talking about black liberation and all that. I got pretty politically aware at a very early age. I would say sometime when I was 10 or 11, I started actually reading history books. I got addicted to reading history books. And then I came across this thing called communism. I started learning about that, and it really affected me. The theoretical ideas of it really inspired me. And so I became, theoretically a communist, arguing with my history teachers in the school about, Castro and, the Soviet Union and all these different things that they had a completely different take on, obviously. I started to get disillusioned with communism, and by the time I was 15 or 16, and then that's when I came across anarchism. And anarchism to me was just basically, it was just a word that was put to everything that I already believed in already. They just put a word to it. And so theoretically, the shift from communism to anarchism began when I was 16. And then by the time 2011 came across, I was in Minneapolis in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And Occupy Wall Street, which was this movement that was created in New York in response to the economic depression of 2008, where, these banks basically got bailed out by the government from our taxes for mistakes that they had made, billions of dollars that they had, and mistakes that they had made, paying for it with us with absolutely no return. There were a lot of middle-class white people that were very upset about that. And so this movement, this nationwide movement called Occupy Wall Street started, where they started physically occupying with their bodies, Occupy Wall Street. And then it began to spread all across the world. It came to Minneapolis, and it came to, at that time, which is what is still the center of government power, at the government center in downtown Minneapolis. We have City Hall, and you have the jail, and you have the government center, all kind of in U.S. Bank right in the same location. So it was a prime location for us to do a occupation. And I participated in that as an activist, and then eventually as an organizer. And that was sort of my first real experience with, agitating and educating and organizing on the streets. Came into a lot of different organizations, a lot of different people that were in the movement, right? Theoretically, I was always there, but in practice, it did not actually happen. My practice of my politics didn't come until Occupy Wall Street came to town. So that was a pretty pivotal thing. It affected my life so much that the job that I had, the piss poor job at Papa John's that I had, paying very little, working very little hours, I wasn't able to work that anymore. And as a result, I lost the money to pay for my really shitty apartment. And as a result, I basically went homeless and decided, hey, there's this occupation right here. I'm pretty much living here anyway. I might as well just go homeless and live here. But that worked out for a little while until the winter came, you know. And then I needed to figure out other things, and it was a whole saga. Something we'll get into at a later date. But yeah, basically spent like 2 years homeless. Got a job with UPS, became a union organizer for the IWW, which is the Industrial Workers of the World, one of the oldest labor unions in the U.S., also one of the most radical, comprising of many different, but mostly anarchists, but also some communists, some Marxists here and there. I joined that organization, became a labor organizer, and then I got the call from my brother saying, hey, you know, your dad's had Parkinson's for a while now, and mom has been there taking care of him, but she's really kind of getting overworked and she needs someone to help out. And we know that you got a job and all that and responsibilities as an organizer and everything, but you know, we need someone to go over there and help take care of them both. And you know, at the time I was just like, well, that's understandable. We all have family and children. It's easier for me to depart from my life than it is for y'all. So yeah, I can do that, you know, for about 6 months, you know what I mean? And then after that, I got to get back here. You know, that was sort of the deal that we established. 6 months became a year, you know, a year became a year and a half, but eventually I did make it back to Minneapolis. So yeah, I departed for South Africa in about 2013 or 14. I want to say 14. No, 2013. Came back here came back to the United States. Minneapolis, back to Minneapolis around 2015. You know, obviously things had changed a lot, but generally things were pretty much still the same. My comrades were still working at UPS organizing. Couldn't really find a job organizing there anymore because I had pretty much been tagged as, you know, an agitator and as an organizer and as a troublemaker. And so because of my activities with that, they did not hire me back. I instead got a job working at another union campaign down at the river for Upper River Services, just basically a tow barge transportation company that transports barges and goods and salt and oil and all these types of raw materials up and down the river for all these major companies, Norton Salt or, you know, General Electric or whoever, you know, all these different companies that have their refineries and their factories on the river. We would transport their stuff up and down the river. Good business for them, good business for us, but one of the roughest jobs I've ever had. Again, that will be for another vlog episode, but not now. So, did that for a while. Did that maybe for like 3 months or so, actually. And then I found another job working as a meat counter service person, basically just wrapping up people's meat and giving it to them at a co-op called Seward Co-op, Community Co-op in South Minneapolis. Quite an experience there. You know, as a co-op, you know, they had principles where, you know, we only buy local stuff and, you know, we don't serve anything with antibiotics or growth hormone, any meat with any, you know, any of our products have any of that stuff. It was real health focused and the prices were absurdly expensive because of that. More expensive than your regular, you know, grocery stores, but their whole stitch was that, you know, the reason that this is because all the stuff that we have is local and is healthy for you and is way more healthier for you, which for the most part it was. Right, so they were just making buku money from all these white people, all these upper middle class white people, white women in particular, and paying us, you know, pennies on the dollar. So obviously there was a lot of agitation amongst the workers about those issues and just the way that we were being harassed and treated by managers. And so there was a union campaign that was coming up that I actually didn't have anything to do with, because at that time, you know, with the police movement, the police brutality, anti-police brutality movement, I was much more involved in that whole thing with the Black Lives Matter shit. And, there was a section of the IWW called the General Defense Committee. And I was much more involved with the General Defense Committee and just providing for the general defense of the working class. I wasn't really involved in labor organizing that much anymore, but it didn't really matter. This stuff was happening whether I was involved in it or not. I tried to stay uninvolved with it as much as possible, but eventually it became something that was just impossible to ignore, and it became a real serious union campaign. And eventually they got a union recognized, not through us, not through the IWW, but through UFCW, which is United Food Commercial Workers. Had to bump heads with them a little bit. Again, between having to fight union bosses and to fight management, it was too much for me. And I decided to leave that place. There's a whole lot more details than that I'll reveal at another episode. And then I finally landed at Whole Foods. And I did that for not very long, just enough to be able to get some money so I can come back over here, because the idea was always that I was going to come back here and sort of continue to help take care of Baba. So now I'm here. Now I'm back. I survived America, and I made it back to my homeland, and someday I do hope to get back to America. I just don't know when that will be. In the meantime, I'm going to do everything that I can to, like I said, provide as best of living conditions for my parents as possible, but also provide a safe landing space for any of my friends that want to come out here and explore and see the country for themselves, because I think it's very important. African Americans in particular, but just anybody, Americans, French, Chinese, doesn't matter. Everyone should come here and see this, because what is here is a whole lot of opportunity and a whole lot of, from an educational perspective, from a financial, economic perspective, from an educational perspective that, just can't be taught anywhere else. You know what I mean? And it's truly a very extremely diverse and special place that I think everyone can benefit from in some way. So, that's really my core mission right now is, to provide as best of a space for them, but also to try and, encourage other people to come here too, right? And try to provide what little skills and what little resources I have to ensuring that South Africa becomes, a better place than what it is now. Because we got a lot of problems around here, with 25% unemployment and youth unemployment, and the political situation being as in corruption everywhere. We got a lot of issues, a lot of things to clean up here. This is by far no paradise, but like I said, there's a lot of resources. There are a lot of opportunities here that if we just utilize them in the correct way, we could be a shining beacon, not just to Africa, but the entire world. And I truly believe that in that vision. And, that's something that I definitely want to dedicate my life to help it. You know what I mean? Because anyone who knows me, the reason that I organize is because, I believe in humanity of this world, and I believe in people making, a better situation for themselves. We can always do that. We can always, no matter how bad things are, they could always be worse, right? It's about what are you doing with what you have right now, and how are you using that to better yourself and better your people. And in general, I feel like South Africa is a place where there's just a whole lot of potential that just has not been utilized in the best way. And if we utilize it in the best way, we're going to end up seeing returns that, will far surpass any of our expectations. So, hopefully we'll get to that top point sooner than later. In the meantime, I'm kind of here, for the long haul of it. And like I said, I encourage, especially my brothers, especially my sisters, come out here, see this place for yourself. It will change your life. So next episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Coming to South Africa, the things you kind of need to take into consideration, how to get out here, different places to go, all that stuff. But that's going to be for the next episode. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. That's the way that you're going to be able to get all the updates. I'll try to post this on social media as much as I can, but sometimes I'm not always on social media, right? So, if you want real up-to-date updates on the vlog, then please subscribe to that channel. Otherwise, hope you're having a wonderful day, wonderful night. Peace and blessings from wherever you are. Talk to you next time. Peace.